Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, it's all about classroom management, and not about managing your students, but being the manager of your classroom. What exactly is a manager? Thank you for returning back to my channel, and thank you for subscribing. I appreciate all of you who have subscribed to my channel and have supported me throughout this journey so far. If you're new to my channel and you like these types of videos, then click that subscribe button today and click the like button so that you can see more videos from me throughout the school year. So what is a manager? A manager is a person who actually operates a place. They plan, they collaborate, they staff, they direct, they control, they lead. And guess what? We do the same things as teachers. We do all of this so that we can achieve a goal, that our students have a successful education, that they learn, that they grow, and at the same time, they are secured in the environment that we provide for them. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 P's: planning, prepping, and procedures. Planning. Now, planning is one of those #1 things that I personally think is of the utmost. I have to have everything planned and in place even before my students take a step in that classroom. I plan my lessons a week ahead of time. And sometimes if I'm doing a unit, it can be a couple of months ahead of time. It just depends on exactly what I'm doing. But I have to have my lessons plans planned out thoroughly so that I know what I'm going to teach my students, that I'm not running around the day of teaching trying to figure out what am I going to do next. What should I teach them? Oh, why didn't this work? No. So when I'm planning, I do not just write a bunch of objectives down and step by step what I'm going to do. I include those things, but I begin to do my research. Planning for me is researching the information that I am going to teach my students. Research includes watching a video, reading information for that particular lesson, especially when it comes to science. If I need to look in a book, I will go ahead and read thoroughly in the book. If it's an experiment, I'm going to watch a video on an experiment, and I'm going to test out this experiment to make sure I understand and be prepared for my students to know all the misconceptions that can occur, all the hiccups that can occur during an experiment. And when my students have questions, I want to be the expert and help them out and answer them for them. Now that I have my lessons plans or units written up, now I go back and I look through them. And I have to decide what things I'm going to need for my students that I can get ready ahead of time. And so that leads to prepping. Now I'm going to prep my materials. I like to get to school early in the morning and leave on time. So I spend my time in the mornings prepping materials, getting things ran off, making copies, setting up my computer, making Google Slides, PowerPoints, whatever I'm going to need. When it comes to science, I like to prep all of my experiment materials. I come in and I get those done ahead of time before students ever walk into that classroom. I lay out all the materials on the counter or desk as needed so that students can easily get them when it's time for us to do the experiment. Also for prepping, I like to have everything laid out on my computer ahead of time. So for instance, on my computer, if I know I'm going to show a video, then I pull that video up in the morning. If I'm going to use the Google Slides, I go ahead and pull those up in a different tab. Whatever I'm going to use on the smart board or smart TV, I have that prepared on my computer so that I do not waste any time in the classroom looking for that information. Also, for prepping, I put all of my objectives or standards, I have them written on the board. Any questions that I have for my students or journal entries that they'll have to do for science, I have those written on the board ahead of time. So I like to prepare as much as possible so that things can run smoothly during a science experiment or any lesson that I'm teaching. During prepping, I test out the experiment. This is probably a few days ahead of time. I go ahead and gather the materials and do the experiment myself so that I know what kids may run into, or I know what kids will see when they conduct the experiment. You know, it's one thing to watch the experiment on a video, which is fine, but to actually do it myself is more important because I can connect better with the students and help them out, because I want to be the expert for them so that they can turn to me and ask questions and not have to wonder what exactly is going on or why didn't this work. I remember in one particular experiment, exploding bags, and I've done this on a video, and I'll leave the link up here. The students, I had already tried this experiment out probably several times, and it always worked. And so I had the measurements correct. I had, how much they were going to put in the bag and what they needed to do. Well, the students, when they did the exploding bag, the bag did not explode. And so as I was walking around and talking to the students and asking them different questions, I determined that the students were not sealing their bags completely. And so I had to do just a little mini lesson and show them how to zip that bag or snap it all the way across before they mixed the vinegar and baking soda together. After doing that, the students were successful and were able to see the exploding bag in action, which of course they loved. So that's why it's important for you to test out the experiment ahead of time. With prepping, have everything prepared ahead of time before you teach, before your students enter that room. Students feel so secure and they feel comfortable knowing that everything is prepared and they know what is expected, and they don't have to make guesses wondering what is going to happen, because they know that you are prepared and you are ready to teach them for that day. Years ago, probably my 5th year of teaching, I had this sweet student, Casey. And Casey now, she's an adult and she's a special ed teacher. And I was so blessed to be able to work with her. And we're actually, both of us are from Louisiana. And I remember Casey telling me one day in science, and she said, "Miss Gay, you are always prepared, and you are so organized and have things together." That comment stuck with me for years, because that is exactly what I want. I want my students to know that I am prepared for them, because there's no other reason for me to be in that classroom if I'm not there for my students. Now that we've planned, we've prepared, now the next important part are the procedures. Procedures. Now, do you have procedures in place in your classroom? Of course you do. As the manager of your classroom, you have to have some form of procedures ready for your students so that they can be successful. Procedures are important in my classroom. I start teaching procedures the first day my students enter the classroom. I do not teach all of them, but throughout the first 9 weeks of school, I teach them procedures over and over and over again, so that they know what to do, even if I'm not at school and they have a substitute teacher. Or if I'm running late, they know to line up by the door and then to enter the classroom and to quietly unpack their bags and then to sit and begin morning work. Because I have taught them the procedures and they know the expectations that are for them. During that first week of school, procedures I include procedures for lining up, procedures for unpacking your bag, procedures for entering the room, procedures for exiting the room, procedures for the bathroom, procedures for the cafeteria. I know it sounds like a lot of procedures, but it is just the way of a school culture, the way we do things. When you walk into Walmart, you don't see chaos everywhere. There are procedures in Walmart where the workers have to do certain things to ensure that we're able to find the products that we need. We're glad that Walmart has food in one area, canned goods in one area, towels in a different area, instead of having everything mixed up, and that we walk in and then we become discombobulated thinking, where's this, where's that? I'm tired of walking around in this store. But no, procedures are important, and it is just part of life for all of us. And so once kids learn these procedures, they know them and they don't even think about them. They just do them. And so it is my job as the classroom manager to teach them my expectations and how to do things in a school environment. So how do I do this when it comes to science? Every year, the first week of school, not the first day or the second or third day, but probably that Thursday or that Friday, I have time blocked out to teach my students the procedures for science experiments especially. That first week, my students get to do an engaging, hands-on science experiment. Sometimes they're really simple. It can be the rainbow milk. It could be the penny drop. Just something simple so that I can teach them the scientific process and I'm teaching them the procedures. The first thing I like to teach my students is safety. Safety is of the utmost. I go over safety rules for our classroom, and I go over safety rules for doing an experiment. Now, you can pull up safety rules from several places. I create a PowerPoint, and then I share it with my students, but I don't just run through them. I actually go through them so they understand about not eating something unless it's an experiment that's a food experiment that we're going to eat. I explain to them about heat and how to use gloves, why it is important to wear goggles. I talk to them about sharp things. And with safety, one of the big things I talk to my students about is how to respect and to treat each other during an experiment. Because the last thing I want them to do is to harm each other. And so sometimes we think, oh, kids are not going to do that. Well, I've been doing this over 20 years, and you never know what you're going to see. And so to prevent it, go over those safety rules. Next, I teach my students how to gather materials and where materials are located in the room for that particular experiment. I also set up my students for success. I put them in collaborative groups and I divide them according to their ability. I try to put students together that may have high ability, average ability, and medium ability, low ability. I kind of mix them up so that we have a variety in each group. At this time, I teach my students about jobs because jobs are important so that students will know what their part is during the experiment. So sometimes with the jobs, I'll have a materials person. That is important because I only want one person per group up gathering materials instead of all the students clamming around the table and chaos happens. We don't need that, especially when they're already hyped up and excited to do that experiment. All right, then I have an engineer, a technician person who's going to clean up when the experiment is over. I also have a person who's a timekeeper who does the timing for the experiment, or monitor. And then, of course, the tester. Usually, though, with the tester, I make sure that everyone has an opportunity in that group to test it out, because I don't want to leave anyone out when it's time to do the experiment. Now, once we get all of our materials together, I teach them step by step how to conduct that experiment. I don't just say, okay, guys, let's go for it. Just do this experiment. No, I like to walk them through step by step that first experiment. Now, later on in the year, I type out procedures, and each group get their procedures, and then they read them for themselves and go step by step. But that's because at this point, they know what to do. At the beginning, they have no clue what I expect of them. And so I want to teach them so that they understand what is expected of them. When they're conducting the experiment, my job is the facilitator. I'm the guide on the side. I walk and I monitor the entire class. I go from group to group, listening to their discussions, also asking them questions, also answering any questions that they may have. I also like to listen so that if a student has any misconception, that way I can address those. Monitoring and walking around helps keep behavior in check, because the students know that I'm there, and as I walk around, and if they start playing, then there's a consequence for that. And it doesn't take but one time to remove a student temporarily from the group during an experiment, because they do not want to miss out. Now, have I removed a student from a group? Yes, but they are replaced. They can return back to that group after a minute. I give them time to just chill. I have an area in my room called the calm down area, and if they just turn the timer over for 1 minute, chill, and they come back, because sometimes they can get overly excited, especially when I teach gifted students, and they don't mean any harm. It's just so exciting that they begin to do things that they're not supposed to. So it is my job as the manager to help them with their behavior. During this lesson also, and many more to come, I teach my students how to communicate with each other. I teach them how to listen to each other and not talk over each other, and that one person speaks at a time. Now, this is a job that takes a while, and I really, strive to ensure that students learn how to communicate well with each other. My students learn how to use terms like I agree with you because, I disagree with you because. They learn to have wait time and let that person completely get their thoughts out. Even though they're excited, they still learn to do this. And so, usually by the second semester of school, it's no problem. They are communicating well. And like I said, this takes time. This is not a one-time thing. It takes time to teach them. One of the things I want to say about managing your classroom and teaching procedures is to be consistent. Don't think after you do this the first week of school, it's a done deal. It's not. You have to be consistent as a manager. You can't change your mind 2 weeks later and confuse the students. You need to continue that routine or those procedures so they know what is expected of them. Lastly, during procedures, I teach students the cleanup process, because I like things to remain calm when we're getting ready to clean up. Now, are students chatty? Yes, that is perfect. But I don't want everyone getting up and running around. So the technician, I tell them the things to bring over to me, which materials to return to the table, which things to put into the trash can. And this always runs smoothly. Even the very first day it does. But it's just me standing there, guiding them and directing them throughout this process. Students need guidelines. They need procedures in place. They want to feel secure in your classroom. And it is your responsibility, my responsibility, as the teacher and as the adult, to provide an environment that is secure and safe for them. And this can be done all through classroom management. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video and you got some great ideas that you can use in your classroom. Please let me know if you do. Leave me a comment in the comment section so that I know that you enjoyed this video, and you may have some tips that can help me out also. So leave those for me. If you're new to my channel, please remember to subscribe and like. Thank you for joining me today. I pray you have a wonderful and blessed day. See you in the next video.